Welcome to another Tech by Tips video. Today I've got a really good video for you, fresh out of the oven, especially if you're a person that is looking for a new job in the current marketplace. I think you'll find this video to be very useful, and it'll give you a lot of good tips on things to be mindful of and how to recognize if a company is a good company or if it's actually not a good company or maybe even a scam. On today's video, we're gonna see the interview process of a company that has a lot of bad reviews in Glassdoor and other places, and basically 7 out of 10 people that are interviewed for this company, especially people like me who are technical, who are, for example, software engineers or DevOps engineers and the sort, all of them basically have anything bad to say about this company. If you go and check their reviews, you will not see a positive, especially recent review of the interview process for this company. So I went through the effort of passing through that interview process to get you insight and understanding of how you identify when a company is good or not, and to point out the good things that they are actually doing and the not so good things that they are actually doing. So hopefully you'll like this video. If you find it useful, like, subscribe, let me know in the comments what kind of things you would like to see in the future, and let's get to it.
I think the problem that we've had is that we have people decided they didn't really want to work so much anymore through COVID, and that has had a massive issue on productivity. Tradies have definitely pulled back on productivity. They have been paid a lot to do not too much in the last few years, and we need to see that change. We need to see unemployment rise. Unemployment has to jump 40-50% in my view. We need to see pain in the economy. We need to remind people that they work for the employer, not the other way around. I mean, there's been a systematic change where employees feel the employer is extremely lucky to have them, as opposed to the other way around. So it's a dynamic that has to change. We've got to kill that attitude, and that has to come through hurting the economy, which is what the whole global, the world is trying to do. The governments around the world are trying to increase unemployment to get that to some sort of normality. And we're seeing it. I think every employer now is seeing it. I mean, there is definitely massive layoffs going off. People might not be talking about it, but people are definitely laying people off, and we're starting to see less arrogance in the employment market, and that has to continue because that will cascade across the cost balance.
Hello and welcome to this video. On this video we're going to be talking about a company named TheoremOne. And as you can see, this is their website, is TheoremOne.co. It's not .com, it's .co. And they're a California company, allegedly. And it says that they're basically like a consulting company. And they say that their services include software and engineering consulting, building applications, for example, and allegedly rescuing failing projects, creating models and augmenting teams, and revamping processes and workflows. This is very interesting one, like making processes better. Yeah, they apparently have some big clients like AT&T, and they say that they work with companies that are well known like Microsoft, American Express, Google, etc. And they provide them with insights and services to achieve their desires and goals, especially regarding technology. Interesting. So yes, so this is their website. Obviously it's going to be pretty. It's actually very nicely done. It's very modern compared to other websites of other companies. And why are we talking about this? We are talking about this because if you come into Glassdoor and you actually research this company, this is probably one of the worst evaluated companies that I have seen in a long time. And you might be aware that things are not very rosy today in the tech market, and you probably might have been affected by layoffs or the sort. And there are these companies like this which have a very, very negative review. For this company specifically, 7 out of 10 people have something bad to say about them, especially the interview process. And they're accessible easily through places like LinkedIn. You will definitely see in their LinkedIn page postings for jobs that allegedly they need to fill. For example, this is the position that I interviewed for this video. And as you can see, today, it's still open. They're saying that they're still hiring for this position. So a lot of companies are doing this, where they open positions that they really don't plan to fill. And they are just plainly being disrespectful of people's time and asking for very unrealistic things to make people honestly just feel desperate and frustrated in the job search. You probably saw a video that I put before I started talking. That is the point of view of many CEOs of tech companies, especially nowadays. And this is just another extension of that, where you can see it in action. So this company here doesn't have a lot of details, honestly, for it being allegedly a big company that works with big clients, etc. It's very empty here. There's not a lot of information about the company. It's supposed to be from 2017 that it was founded. You will see that they have renamed themselves several times. They're posting a lot of positions that they're saying that they need to fill that have been open for a long time, and they don't close them. They don't close the positions, they leave them open, and they keep interviewing people. And if we go and research more about this company, we can see, for example, here, one thing that I recommend if you're looking for a position, going to places like Glassdoor or the Fishbowl application, or any website that does reviews by employees and by prospective employees of a company, and check it out. Especially if you look at positions that are related to your position. In my case, it would be something on the engineering side, so software engineering, DevOps engineering. You can see AI engineer here. And if you look, very recent postings for this position show a pattern of things happening with this position, company. If you see, everything is like negative experience. The only positive thing is like the interview is average or easy, which it is. But the experience is just negative. They are very disrespectful of your time and your resource. And if you can filter here by position, but I'm just gonna go through so you can see the only positive reviews that you're gonna see here are for non-technical people, which are not supposed to be the core of what they serve. This is a senior solution architect with a negative experience. Let's read a little bit of the reviews. For example, this person interviewed, they scheduled an initial interview, and then they kept postponing their interview. It happened for 2 weeks, and then they were told that the position has been filled. Look at this. Pay attention to this. The position has been filled. This other person says they interviewed, the recruiters were unprofessional, they can't figure out how to schedule a call, questions are not even relevant, and they can't answer your questions. Don't even bother interviewing with these clowns, this person says. This was last month. Here, another experienced engineer with a negative experience, and says basically that they applied, the screening was straightforward, and then here's the main important part. The 8 hours assignment is the horrendous part. They ask you to do this assignment for 8 hours. In his case, it was Swift or Swift UI, and then they put you in a Slack channel. They don't answer any questions, they don't talk to you, and after all your work, they don't have the decency to give you any feedback. This person basically has that negative experience. This is a product strategist. It's not as technical of a position, but again, we can see negative experience, and they are describing an interview process that is subpar. Let's continue with engineering people, because that's mainly what I want to focus on. This is an engineering manager. They said their process was irrelevant, and he had to pre-record answers to questions, like a video, and he has to provide them a video. And then you just wait a long time, and they just reject you. So he felt like this was a waste of time. Let's go back to another technical person, engineering manager. This is still very new, very relevant. And this person says that, again, problems with scheduling calls. He was interviewed by someone from Brazil that was basically following a script, and they just sent him a generic rejection without any feedback. This is a developer. So if you can see, you see a pattern. The main point here is when you're looking at a company, you have to look for a pattern. If you see that, because usually these reviews, I take them with a grain of salt. But when I see a pattern, it means that something is actually happening and they don't have a way of hiding it. And that's clearly a problem with this company. They have a hiring process problem that is clearly seen in a pattern. If you keep on reviewing, this goes back for like a year, or mainly a year, where everything is negative. Everything is negative. When I saw this, I was like, well, let's check this company out, because this is just strange, right? I've never seen a company with so many bad reviews and so many people saying the same thing over and over again. There must be some truth to that. And that's why I was involved in the process to get interviewed for a position at TheoremOne. But first, I wanted to kind of get more details about this company, see about their background, see what news are out there about it. What I noticed is that this company was a very small company up until like 2015, 2017, and they started growing, but it's not because of their products being good or they're offering good services, but because they kept buying other companies. They got investors to give them money to buy and merge other companies that were actually good at doing things, and that's how they grew. So if you look, every time you see some news about this company, it's like, oh, they bought another company and they're joining with that company. In this case, this was last year and they merged with S4 Capital. There's another one with Media Monks, and if you keep on reading, like, this company has not provided any successful service to other companies that could be newsworthy. It's been always growing through buying other companies. You can see more news here, for example, all the way back to 2018 when they were originally named Citrus Byte. And if you see, this company has a pattern of buying companies and then changing their name. If you are a good service provider, if you're a good company, your name is super important. Your brand name is super valuable. You don't want to be changing names like crazy. But this company has changed their name several times. First it was Citrus Byte, then they announced that they were changing their name because they bought another company. So now they're Theorem, right? And then they keep on buying other companies, and then they're saying that they're going to rebrand again. When you change the name of your company, it's usually because you're trying to hide something. So that was another, for me, in this video we're going to be talking about red flags. That was a first red flag when I was researching the background of the company. As it is, this was a big red flag. The reviews being so negative. And if you try to find more information about the company, like, there's very little information about how much money they actually make from their services, about the company structure, like the debt, and things that you would normally find for any successful and trustworthy company. So those were the first things that I was checking when I was thinking about doing this interview with this company. And as you can see, you should follow this process too. You should search for news about the company. You should read about the company reviews by other people and employees. You should find information about the products and services that the company offers and all that sort of things. First thing is, I saw the job posting in LinkedIn, so I applied to the position to see if they would reach out to me, given that I have a good record of work in that field. And indeed, I was contacted by a person named Chrétien, and he's the recruiter that was working with me in this process. As you can see, he reached out, he said he was interested, he wanted to interview me for that position that is still open, that has been open for a while, right? And they're saying, that they offer good things, they have good clients, the usual thing to sell you the idea of working for the company, right? And then they give you their own website details, which obviously is going to be
good things talking about the company. They're not going to say the truth or things that are not positive about themselves. So he provides that information. It's usual. All the recruiters do that, so that I have nothing against him. I'm just saying, that's normal. That's what you will get. And then I provided him with my CV, and I said, yes, I'm looking for an opportunity, and yes, let's see what we can do. And then time passed, and I did not hear from the person. And I said, why you write if you're not replying back? 3 days after I sent that message, then he gets back to me. And he says that he just got to see the message. And then he said that he wanted to talk to me to see if there was a match in there. So I said, okay, I have this time available. Let's do a call. And he set up a calendar invite with an interview. And I said, okay, sounds good. The interview was scheduled. The first thing that we talked about in the interview was very simple, straightforward, about what have you been doing, why are you looking for a new job. He was talking a little bit about the company, but honestly it was pretty fast. There wasn't a lot of details into the process. He just said that my resume looked fine, that's what they were looking for, and he liked my resume. He think I would be a great fit for it, which I believe he was honest about that. And then he said that the process involved that I would need to participate in a mock workday, meaning that I had to spend 8 hours in a single day completing a project that somebody in the company decided that was the best way to evaluate candidates. And I said, okay, not normal. Actually, it's very abnormal, because I've worked with small companies and big companies and none of them do anything like that. But I said, okay, let's go through it. And I got the invite for the interview. And as you will see in the next part of the video, the interview process indeed reflected all of the red flags that people were discussing in the reviews of this company. There was clearly a lack of respect for people's time, or at least not even the awareness of respecting people's time, and it just seemed very unnatural. That's the best way I can describe it. It seemed like this was not a real company, like they were not really trying to fill a position. They were just wasting people's times, griefing people. I just want to make a note here that the actual conversation with Chrétien was good. He was very professional, and he was very open. I asked him a lot of questions and he was very open while answering these questions. I was able to extract out of him during our first call that he actually had a little bit of frustration and felt a little sad with the fact that a lot of the people that he was trying to push forward to fill up these positions that he was certain they were a good match, they were just being flatly rejected through this interview process, especially the 8-hour interview. Realistically, not well evaluated maybe. And he felt frustrated with the fact that he had pushed so many candidates and it was always being a rejection, either due to the process being too annoying and the evaluation also being too strict on things that maybe shouldn't be as strict, and that he was trying to push for changes in this process, but he was not being listened to, which to me was another red flag. If you are not listening to your employees, especially your recruiters that are actually talking to the people that you're trying to reach and employ, there is a big red flag there. On the expected day of the long interview, you're invited to join a Slack channel. If you're like me and you don't have Slack, you have to create your account, set up MFA, etc., so that you can get access to Slack, because they don't use Teams or any other thing, they use Slack. Once you create your account and log in, it'll invite you into a private chat they have created for this exercise. And once you go in, you will see a bot mentioning that you were added to the channel, and you will probably get some message from one of the people involved in that chat. In my case, there were about 7 people, but in the end it turned out to be like 9 people. So there was a lot of people invited into that chat, even though honestly there was only 2 people maybe at most who were actually talking, if anything. You are then prompted by the bot to provide your GitHub username and the date for the interview that you are taking with the company. So you provide that information, and after selecting that everything looks good, it'll just go ahead and remove that message from the chat, and then basically you're in the group chat with all the people that are supposed to be involved. At this point, I proceeded to check the members of this chat to try to get some background into what I'm getting into and to validate that they're actually employees of said company. And I found a red flag in here where some of the people that were involved in this chat didn't even have a LinkedIn profile, and others that did have the profile was pretty empty. It lacked a lot of information. Additionally, for being a US company, I would have expected that the team of people that are involved with the recruiting process and maybe HR would be US based, but no, in this case, almost all of the people involved in the chat were not US based people. They were from other countries. In Bulgaria, for example, in Africa, there was people in South America, and there was only 2 people that their profile said that they were in the US. It's important to note that it's normal now for people to be located all over the globe, but usually for reputable companies in the US, the hiring process is driven by US people. Especially in the age of scams where we're living, we have a lot of people that are pretending to be recruiters from other companies, especially countries like in India or sometimes in South America. This tends to be something that you have to be careful with, especially if you see that they start asking for information that they should not be asking. For example, a recruiter should never ask you for your social security or any information like that. After that, I got a message from the person that seemed to be in charge of this, where they are asking me if I want to see the instructors tomorrow because we're talking the day before the interview, and I say yes, to be fair. But the person, apparently, this was another red flag for me. The person in charge of this says that he's not going to be working the day of the actual interview. So he actually enabled the interview early. So we got that prompt in the chat room with all the details about the interview. And it has a GitHub repository with the instructions and basically what they're going to be using as their grading criteria for the interview. So I basically just checked what they had, and to be fair to the process, I didn't do anything. I just stepped away from my computer, disconnected from Slack, and came back the next day. On the next day, I click on the GitHub URL, which gives me an invitation. I accept the invitation, then I see a README with the description of what has to be done for this exercise. Basically, I can tell that they're trying to identify if you can use infrastructure as code, if you know how to manage containers, if you know about the virtual private networks in the cloud, if you know how to manage buckets or storage in Azure, and how do you expose a service to make it accessible in an application. So they also request that you create some sort of application API to expose that content. So basically you have to create a small application that behaves like an API with a specific endpoint, and when you hit that specific endpoint, it retrieves the information from the cloud in either S3 or Azure Blob Storage and displays the content of that JSON file into the browser. Now that I know that they require me to deploy stuff to the cloud, I proceed and ask about who will give me the Azure subscription to deploy this infrastructure to, because I would expect that once I deploy things, they would want to evaluate what I have deployed and also take care of the cost. I proceeded to download the GitHub repository, and I found a license document within it, and in the license they are expecting to get all the rights to everything that happens in this exercise, which I obviously do not agree with, because first of all, they're not paying me for it. Second of all, I'm the one writing code here. And third of all, I'm pretty sure there's not going to be a job offer here based on what I have read before. So companies need to know that they can just get away with anything because they write something in a little piece of document. I just made sure that legally I did not agree with that, and I would be able to do anything with the results of this interview process. As you can see here, almost an hour has passed. They have effectively wasted another hour of my time here waiting for a reply, which is another red flag in this process regarding the question on where I'm going to deploy the infrastructure. So I go ahead and continue working on things on my own account, assuming that that's what they are gonna expect, and I start documenting the things in the README as they requested. Literally almost an hour after I post my question, I get an answer, and as expected, they expect me to use my own personal account for their whim of an interview exercise, and they expect me to be limited to $10 in the expenses for this exercise. This assumes that they expect me to create a Kubernetes cluster on very tiny machines in Azure. At this point in the process, I proceed to create the Azure resources and to document the process to create these Azure resources. And once I have uploaded the JSON file to the blob storage, I make sure that I make it publicly accessible to limit the amount of code necessary to access this from the application. And I make sure that the container is also accessible from the outside. I try to access it from the browser, and I validate that it is currently not allowed, so I fix that by making sure that the access level is blob so anybody can read the blobs. I will try to not bore you with the rest of this, but the rest is short snippets of the work being performed, creating all the different infrastructure in the cloud. In this case, I found that to create an AKS cluster right now in Azure, it's very hard to do that with a small size of VMs. So you're basically stuck spending unnecessary amount of money for stuff like this with big sizes of VMs, because there's just no availability for small VMs to do that. And besides that, I just validated that the cluster was successfully created, everything was working. Then, as usual, informed the team of the things that were happening. I created the PHP API that would simulate what they wanted, and I tested that against a WAMP installation local to my machine to make sure that the code was actually doing what I was expecting. And I was able to validate that on the appropriate endpoint it would give the information, on the wrong endpoints it would just give you a 404. I kept informing them of the process, and they tell me that I need to destroy the resources when I'm done, which doesn't make a lot of sense if they want to evaluate what I did, but anyway, ignore that. And now we proceeded to Dockerize the application, pushed it to Docker Hub, as they are not providing me either with a container registry, and then created the deployment YAML file for Kubernetes and tested it and deployed it to Azure Kubernetes Service. And then after that, I just tested it from Azure and added additional remarks to the README of the repository. And then, as you can see, I deleted everything. There was pretty much no interaction from the people in that company during the whole time that I was performing this exercise. I assumed nobody was gonna respond anymore, so I just left it at that and let them know that that was it from my side. In the end, a few hours later, they asked me if I was done. I told them, yes, I am done. And then they proceeded to allegedly evaluate. And I was sent a message here thanking me for participating in the process. And that was basically it on that wasted day with TheoremOne. I had to wait basically a whole week to hear back from them. And the approach from the recruiter, which I expected it to be that way, was as follows. They said that they liked me, but that they had already extended an offer to a person that they had previously interviewed, and that they will keep me in their radar in case a new position opened up, which is what I've seen other people also saying, that whenever they did hear from them, that was basically what they were told. Either the position was closed or they gave it to someone else. But as you can see, the position remains open, and they remain wasting people's time by interviewing people for roles that they're not actually trying to fill. Given that the recruiter seemed like an actual person that cared about this process, and he seemed to be gathering information to try to improve the process, I actually gave him my feedback. And in my feedback, I told him that first, this 8-hour process is a waste of people's time, honestly, especially when they're forced to be doing something expecting to have any interaction with employees of the company, and there's just no interaction at all from anybody in there, and it's unnecessary, honestly. And additionally, if the company is requesting you to do that, they should also provide you with the Azure or AWS subscription, and they should be the ones paying for all of these resources that are being deployed to the cloud, because they are the ones requiring that, not you. Additionally, they should be able to evaluate what you deploy. So by them owning that subscription, then you can leave all those resources running so that they can evaluate the result of what you actually did, instead of them later having to replicate what you did, and then they would be evaluating what they replicated your work to be, not what your work actually was. Additionally, I told him that if they have people at different stages of the interview process, and their focus seemed to me, like, based on what he said, right, assuming that that's right, their focus seemed to be grabbing the first person that checked all the boxes instead of finding the best candidate for the position, then they should not put people in different stages of the hiring pipeline. They should be in groups sent together so that you don't waste people's time. Because let's say if you interview 10 people and you have 10 people spending 8 hours of their life in this futile exercise, they are effectively wasting 80 hours of manpower for nothing, when it's unnecessary, when it just gives them a bad reputation and makes them look like a bad company. And in the end, that was my feedback to the company. I really appreciated Christian. He was actually a very nice person to talk to and deal with. And unfortunately, I cannot say the same about the others, because there was no interaction, honestly, and it just felt like they didn't even respect my time. To summarize a review of this company, I would say that in the scamometer, they are pretty solid on the shady side. I would not say that they are a scam, because it looks like they are actually a legitimate company and they do business. It's just that their hiring process is really not up to speed, and they're having real problems with making that work appropriately. So I hope you like this video. I hope it helps you in your job search and you don't waste your time like I did.